Hare Krishna, Siddharth Prabhu. Can do small Hare Krishna Kirtan.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam Swamiji.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhu.
Welcome to Kanya Desh.
Thank you. Welcome to the.
Yes, we will wait for one or 2 minutes. Just people are logging.
I'm not able to this thing. I'm just looking at my video is not getting connected.
Yeah, people are getting connected. We can hear you clearly, but video can you open on?
My video is not getting this 1 minute. Wait. Yes.
Yeah, we can see you also.
That's.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Pranam Prabhu.
Welcome, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for joining.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
It's our fortune, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, welcome you all. to our Sravanotsavam, Venkatapati Prabhu. Venkatapati Prabhu is very senior most devotee. He was the Yatra leader for Desh for years. And Prabhu left to India, and he is doing a lot of preaching activities around Middle East. And India itself. So we are very fortunate to have discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter Canto 3, Kapila Dev's instructions. So it is very wonderful session to hear all of us and understand the importance of Kapila's instruction. So we will invite Prabhuji. Welcome to Kanya Desh by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra 3 times. Please all together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama
Hare Hare.
Actually, we supposed to visit Kanya Desh last September. Unfortunately, so we will wait for the another opportunity. Venkatapati Prabhu, you can unmute your phones. Prabhu, you can start now. Yeah, you can start. Hare Krishna. Can you hear? Hare Krishna. Venkatapati Prabhu, you can hear?
Sound not coming from Prabhuji. That's the problem.
Yeah, we will.
Prabhuji is continuing talking, but
Really? Okay, sorry.
Somebody unmuted me there.
Yeah, unmuted, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Yeah, now I'm talking.
Yeah, we can hear.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Are you able to hear?
Hare Krishna, can you speak?
I think he's speaking, Prabhu is not audible, but he is speaking.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Manibhushan Prabhu, I think he's speaking, but we are not able to hear. Maybe his microphone, something, there's some problems there.
Hare Krishna. No audio, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Manibhushan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, we are unable to hear.
So how do they do?
Prabhu, you
You
can.
are talking laptop?
No, I'm talking through my laptop,
Yeah.
through my Bluetooth.
Bluetooth, yeah, but maybe it is not connected.
My Bluetooth is connected. One minute. I will check it.
Yeah.
My Bluetooth is connected.
Okay, but we couldn't
It
hear.
says it is.
We couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
But now we can hear. Now we can hear.
Try to take out the Bluetooth and I will talk. Let us see.
Okay.
Now we are able to hear what I'm talking.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Now you are able to hear.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, okay, all right. So then that means there was some problem with the Bluetooth, possibly. Okay, Hare Krishna. So
Yeah, now we can hear also. We can proceed
yes,
now.
yes,
We tried.
okay, good. Yeah. Okay, Prabhu, thank you. So now we are on this teachings of Kapila Deva
to connect with the YouTube.
Now this is the
Now,
this is what we are going to talk now is from Satya Yuga. So what happened in Satya Yuga, Kardama Muni practiced penance for almost 10,000 years. After practicing the penance for 10,000 years, he was practicing on the banks of the river Saraswati. And when he was practicing, after practicing for about 10,000 years, a very severe practice of penance, the Supreme Lord appeared before him and asked him, what is it that you really want from me? And Kardama Muni said that I need to get married to a lady of like disposition and procreate children, because that's what my father wanted actually. My father, Brahma, has told me to do this, and this is what is my duty to do it. So I want to get married and procreate children. So, but I want to get married to a female of like disposition. Supreme Lord said Tathastu immediately, and he said, day after tomorrow, Swayambhuva Manu will come with his wife Satrupa and will offer his daughter Devahuti in marriage to you. And that will be a good partnership with Devahuti, and that way you will be able to live happily and also fulfill the requirements. Tathastu, so that was good. the place where actually the Supreme Lord landed on the rivers of the bank Saraswati, that place is known as Bindu Sarovar. Because seeing the severe penance carried out by Kardamu Muni, the Lord shed tears from his eyes, and those tears became Bindu Sarovar. So just like he had said, after 2 days, Swayambhu Munu came here with his wife Satarupa and Devahuti and offered his daughter in marriage to Kardamu Muni. Kardamu Muni accepted and they got married and they were living happily. Devahuti was spending all her time in servicing the husband, Kardamu Muni. And Kardamu Muni was very pleased with the service that was being given by Devahuti. So he asked Devahuti, "You have been serving me so nicely. What is it that you want? You can tell me. I will try to fulfill whatever your desire is." So she asked for children. She said, "I need to have children." Also told him, "Look, we don't have a proper place to live. There is no privacy here. They are living in the open place. It's a hermitage and it's open and it's open to everyone, right? So we should also have a proper house to stay in." Now, Kardamu Muni was a great yogi. So immediately what he did was he made an aerial mansion and took Devahuti into that aerial mansion and started going all around the globe. He was going through all the universe, went everywhere, taking her, and both of them were enjoying life completely. By the time Kardamu Muni realized that the life he is enjoying like this, it was already 100 years that had passed. Now, this is something which is for us also to understand. We are all, whatever our age may be, 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, 80 years, whatever it is, the time simply flies. We never realize that the time has gone. Suddenly we say, "Oh, so much of time has gone," but we still feel that we are still young guys, or all in our 20s. That's what we think of. So the time just simply flies. And here also Kardamu Muni realized that already 900 years have passed and nothing has happened. 100 years have just spent just like that. So immediately he decided that now is the time. I will have to give my wife the children. And Kardamu Muni, what he did was he impregnated his wife with 9 female discharges and produced on the same day 9 children, 9 girls he produced. Now, in the beginning, Swayambhu Manu had come to offer his daughter in marriage. At that time, Kardamu Muni had told Swayambhu Manu, "Once my wife becomes pregnant, I will leave the house." So now that the 9 children have been produced, Kardamu Muni was preparing to leave the house. When he was preparing to leave the house, Devahuti said, "Look, you have fulfilled your promise. You have taken care of me nicely. Everything you have done. But then all these 9 girls whom you have produced, whom you have given me, they all will get married and will go away. Then I'll be all alone. And I'll be living in fear. I need to live in fearlessness. For that, what is to be done?" So Kardamu Muni understood what she is referring to. And he said, "Don't worry about anything. The Lord himself will come into your womb and he will take birth as Kapila Deva. And will teach you the entire Sankhya philosophy. He will teach you." So as said, afterwards, the 9 daughters get married and they leave. And Kapila Deva appears. And now Kapila Deva is there to give the teachings to Devahuti. Now, what I have talked to you now is in nutshell what has been discussed from chapter 21 to 24 of Canto 3, Teachings of Kapila Deva. Now we come to the chapter 25, which is called the glories of devotional service. And we'll start reading from this chapter, glories of devotional service. Now in this chapter, glories of devotional service, broadly it is divided into 4 parts of it. First is where Kapila Muni is explaining the highest yoga system, self-realization. Now this can be attained only by engaging in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So this is the first lesson that Kapila Deva is giving to Devahuti. Then afterwards is also talking of self-realized devotees or sadhus. This is the second aspect of it which is teaching in this. Self-realized devotees or sadhus and their symptoms. That's very important to know. What are the symptoms of the self-realized devotees? That is being taught. Then third is the association of devotees, the benefits of association of devotees, and also the process of advancing in Krishna consciousness and devotional service. So that is the third one. Then the fourth one comes the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy means combination of bhakti and mystic realization. So today we'll try to cover from this. Actually, the teachings of Kapila Deva is so vast that it should take not less than 1 month to go through the entire. But we'll see what all we can cover today, and definitely we will cover in the next 2 days also we will. So now here, chapter 25, if you have got the Bhagavatam book before you, you can also open it so that we can all read it together. Due to paucity of time, I will not be reading the shlokas, but I will be straight away going to the translation and the purport wherever it is required. So now comes here 25th. Next one.
And evolution is the process by which human beings
Shaunaka said, although he is born, the Supreme Personality of Godhead took birth as Kapila Muni by his internal potency. He descended to disseminate transcendent knowledge for the benefit of the whole human race. Text 25.2, Shaunaka continued, there is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. Then comes, therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the Personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. Now, this is a conversation, what we need to understand. This is a conversation between Shaunaka Muni and Suta Goswami. But before that, the other conversation, what is taking place under which it has come out, is a conversation between Maitreya Muni and Vidura. Vidura has asked several questions, and for that, Maitreya Muni is answering and is also giving the teachings of Kapila Deva. So here, now, these are the questions that are being asked by Shaunaka Muni to Suta Goswami, saying that about the Personality of Godhead who took birth as Kapila Deva. Now, he himself is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who has come out, and actually no one really knows about the Supreme Lord. Today I was in fact listening to one lecture in the morning, and where this is from the 10th canto what was being discussed. And there it was being explained, the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna who is there, it is actually impossible for anyone to really understand. Try to analyze Krishna and understand Krishna only to the extent our intelligence allows us to understand him, not beyond that. So that is how much Krishna is also easy. At the same time, Krishna is also very difficult to understand. It all depends upon how much of bhakti we develop in trying to understand Krishna, how much of bhakti we develop. But if our objective is to understand Krishna, then it will become very difficult to understand Krishna. But if our objective is only to develop that loving devotional service for the Lord, then it becomes gradually easy to understand the Supreme Lord. That's why here he says, Shaunaka Muni says, there is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. And we have to understand here, we are involved in so many sensual activities, and we try to get so much of happiness from our various material sensual activities. But the true happiness for the senses comes only when we are engaged in the service of Krishna, or the true happiness comes when we simply keep hearing about the glories of Krishna. Therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. The Lord can do everything. He is a self-satisfied person. There is no need that anything we have to do and we have to really satisfy. But still, like it has been explained in the Bhagavatam in the beginning itself, or again, let us get back to this Narsimha Avatara's distinct story where Prahlad Maharaj is explaining to Hiranyakashipu, but whatever we are doing is for our own benefit. Whatever we offer to the Lord, whatever services we do to the Lord is already a self-satisfied person. But that is for our benefit, for our progress in spiritual line, spirituality. That's why we do all those things. It's not that the Lord wants anything. So Sri Sudha Goswami says here, the most powerful sage Maitreya was a friend of Vyasadeva. Being encouraged by Vidura's inquiry about transcendental knowledge, Maitreya spoke as follows. Maitreya said, when Kardama left for the forest, Lord Kapila stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovara to please his mother Devahuti. Now what happens? Kardama Muni has left, and Kapila Muni knows that he has got a duty to perform and is waiting for his mother to inquire. And now Devahuti is inquiring from Kapila Deva. Now Devahuti, when Kapila could show her the ultimate goal of the absolute truth, was sitting leisurely before her. Devahuti remembered the words Brahma had spoken to her, and she therefore began to question Kapila as follows. Now Devahuti starts speaking, and she's saying, I'm on text 7 now. Devahuti said, I'm very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Devahuti said, I'm very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. So in this particular verse, there is a line called Asad Indriya Tarshanat. It says, Asad Indriya Tarshanat. Asad means temporary. Indriya means senses. Tarshanat means agitation. So what she's saying is this, agitation due to the temporary senses, she says, due to manifestation of the senses which are temporary. Let us put it like that. Agitation due to the manifestation of the senses which are temporary. Which means what? Because our body itself is temporary, the agitation caused, the senses are also temporary. As a result, the agitation cost is also temporary. Not only that, we have been passing through different stages. We have been passing through. Once we have been, now we are human beings. Earlier we were animal body. Before that we have had some other bird's body. We have had different bodies already. So no body is permanently we are having it. The body keeps on passing through these various. The soul passes through different types of bodies. Because the soul passes through the different types of bodies, what happens is the senses are also continuously getting engaged in different material activities pertaining to that particular body. Now, beyond this temporary senses, there is also something called a permanent senses what we have. But what has happened is those permanent senses have been covered by the material activities, by the material contamination. Because of the contamination of the material, because of the contamination of the permanent senses of the body, we are not able to get ourselves freed from the material turbulations. So what happens is we become also sick and tired of these temporary material activities. Now, how do I get that? How do I make those permanent senses active? So here says in the purport, Prabhupada is explaining, when the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Sadindriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities is nothing but devotional service. So the minute we engage ourselves in the devotional service continuously, what happens is the temporary material activities, what are the temporary material agitation, what we go through, gradually those things will be removed. Now, when is that possible? Prabhupada in his purport says that unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental message from a person like. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification. Now here comes the question, now something. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, we are all engaged so much in the material sense gratificatory activities, right? How much do we really become tired of it? Sometimes we become tired, sometimes we seem to be enjoying it also. So this is a continuous stage of happiness and distress, happiness and distress. Sometimes out of the sensory activities, we feel that it has given us a great pleasure. Sometimes we also become tired. When it becomes too much for us to bear, we really become tired. Here, Devahuti said, I'm already sick. I'm very sick of the disturbances caused by material senses. And that's why Prabhupada says here, unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental message from a person like Kapila. So now the next verse, she is saying, your lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental I, which by your mercy only I have obtained after many, many births. She's explaining this stuff. Now here, Prabhupada himself says this verse is very, very instructive, because this verse, what he's talking about, Devahuti is talking here, your lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental I, which by your mercy only I have obtained after many, many births. Now here comes the question of relationship between a disciple and the spiritual master. Now the darkest of ignorance, darkest region of ignorance, because of the darkest region of ignorance in our mind only, we are all struggling in this material world. Because we have not understood the real truth, because we have not had that proper self-realization, which the first point of self-realization, what is the difference between the body and the soul? Jivatma, what is the difference? Who is the Supreme Lord? Who is this Jivatma? What is the devotional service? What is this devotional service? And what is the relationship between the Supreme Lord and the Jivatma through devotional service? These are these points which come to light once we get a spiritual master. Once somebody like a spiritual master comes and explains to us, how does the spiritual master explain these things to us? Because he's already seen the light. He knows the truth. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshanaha. He says, upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshanaha. They are already the seers of truth. They know the truth. And because they already know the truth, they are giving us this truth. And with that, our dark eyes are open. Our closed eyes are open. Our ignorant mind is opened to the reality, to the truth. So even to get a spiritual master, you could get in one birth, or probably you have to take several births to get your spiritual master. It is not that I want a spiritual master, immediately I get a spiritual master. That is not possible. Again, that is possible only when I have that genuine interest in me. Like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also. The spiritual master you also get by the mercy of Krishna, and by the mercy of Guru also, by the mercy of Guru only, you can also see Krishna. That is there. So here, he is a transcendental for us. Through him, we are able to get the mercy and understand our true position, and also understand our relationship with the Supreme Lord. And she says, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin and Supreme Lord of all living entities. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of the ignorance of the universe. So Kapila Muni is accepted as the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, and Devavati is again glorifying the Lord and saying that you are the origin and the Supreme Lord of all living entities, and the only objective of your coming again and again is to give this transcendental knowledge to everyone and dissipate the darkest regions of the ignorance in the universe. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. Due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya and have identified myself with the body and consequent bodily relations. Now this is something which is common with all of us, is it not? We all know that we are not this body, we are the soul. We have heard it so many times. But what is the realization? All our activities are carried out like we are this body only. So having that knowledge is one thing. Putting that knowledge into practice and realizing it, that is another. So that is something which we need to understand. Here Devavati is explaining, I am suffering from the same problem. I am completely in my bodily consciousness. And because due to my feelings of false ego, I've been engaged by your Maya, and I have identified myself with the body and consequently bodily relations. Now here there is one question that comes up in the translation. If you see this particular verse, Devavati is saying, due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya. Does that mean, the purport itself, again Prabhupada is explaining that very nicely, and he's asking, does it mean that the Lord engages somebody in his devotional service and engages somebody in the material activities? Is it so? Haven't we heard that the Lord is equal to everybody? Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dvishwastina priyaha. That's what he says in Bhagavad Gita. But here Devavati is saying that you are engaging somebody in your devotional service, but you see by your Maya you are engaging me in this material activities and in these bodily activities. So actually we have to again go to what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. What he says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. Is it not? He says that, right? Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matas smritir jnanam apohanam cha. He explains this in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. What he says, I am sitting in your heart, and from me comes both remembrance and forgetfulness. If you want to remember me, if you want to understand more about me, well, I will help you. But if you want to forget me by engaging yourself very much in the material activities, that is also okay with me. I don't have a problem. I'm not going to force you to become my devotee. You want to enjoy life here in the material world? By all means, you enjoy. I will not stop you from enjoying in this material world. You can go on enjoying it. It happens even to devotees. Even devotees are sometimes engaged in the devotional service, but suddenly this Maya comes and attacks their mind. Suddenly some booth gets into their head and want to say that, doesn't matter, today I will enjoy, I will do something different. I don't want anyone to know. I'll quietly do it myself. I will enjoy myself. Sometimes even devotees get into that situation. So at that point of time, when I want to enjoy myself without informing anybody, I don't even want Krishna to know at that time that I'm enjoying. It was something very privately I want to enjoy. Krishna gives that opportunity, and Krishna says, Matta smritir jnanam apoharam cha. He says that, okay, I will give you that forgetfulness at that temporarily, at least to forget me, so that whatever you want to enjoy, you can enjoy nicely. He gives that also facility for us. Even to the devotee, he gives this. So what we have to understand is, here, everything depends upon us. If I want to get myself engaged in Krishna's service and progress in my devotional service, Krishna is giving a lot of opportunities for me, giving me an opportunity to remember him so much so that I can always engage all my senses in his activities, all my senses in it for his pleasure. All my senses in the activities for Krishna's pleasure. But if I want to forget Krishna and want to enjoy myself thoroughly, that also Krishna is giving us the opportunity. So we have to be very careful about what choice we make. So that is why it has been said here that no, it is not that Krishna is making us enjoy it. It is because of our internal desire that we are doing something like this. And for that, Krishna being the Supreme Lord, and because Maya is working under his direction, Devot is indirectly saying that it is your Maya, it is your agent who is making me do something like this. Because your agent is doing, you are responsible for it. And this is something which we hear in this world, right? Many times we hear from people, when we ask them to get into the movement, we ask them to chant Hare Krishna mantra. Many times what people say, अरे जब टाइम आएगा हम भी करेगा. टाइम आ गया, बट भगवान जब बुलाएगा, बुलावा आएगा तभी हम करेंगे. जब भगवान बुलाते हैं मेरे करने को, तब हम आके करें. I'm sure all of you would have heard this. The Lord has to call him specially, then only he will do it. Without realizing that he himself doesn't want to do it from internally. And that's why he's saying, when the God calls me, I will do it. Why should the God call you to do it? Who are you? What big man are you? Which VIP are you? That God has to specifically call you. Oh, please come, please pray to me, please chant my holy names. Why should the Lord say that to you? Are you any big man? There are so many devotees. 75% of all the Jivatmas are with these lords already. They are doing so much of prayers for him. They are satisfying him in so many ways. Why should he bother about this 25%? Still, because of his mercy, he's giving us all this knowledge. He's sending his representatives as spiritual masters. He's sending his pure devotees down to this world so that this 25% also will get converted and go back to you. But here some people become very smart and feel that the Lord has to call me. When the Lord calls me, I will come. As if I'm a very, very big VIP that he has to call. That doesn't happen like that. Unless we do some Ajnata Sukriti, or unless something we have done really great seva for the Lord without our knowledge, then only the Lord, out of mercy, he enables us to think of him. Otherwise, we don't even remember the Supreme Lord. So Devoti says further, I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists, and I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman and between spirit and matter. Now here you see, what is being said is, Devati says, I've taken shelter of your lotus feet because you're the only person of whom to take shelter. Not anybody else. The only person to really take shelter is the Supreme Lord. There are so many demigods also. People take shelter of so many other demigods also. But here, being devotee is completely being very clear. Because she has already said before that you are the incarnation of the Lord, Supreme Lord. She has said that. Now here she says the only person really of whom the shelter should be taken is of the Supreme Lord. You are the one of whom I should take the shelter, and you are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. Just think in Bhagavad Gita what Krishna says in the last chapter. Sarvadharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshekshami Mam Shuchaha. He says that. I am the only axe, or rather, I can, what he says, just surrender unto me, and by surrendering unto me, all your papas can be vanquished. Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo. All the sinful reactions, I can extinguish it completely and give you this Mokshekshami Mam Shucha. And I will take you back to me, don't worry. But first you surrender. That is what is required. So he is the only one who can give that, who has got that ability, or who has got the power to completely wipe out the sinful reactions, our sinful reactions. Nobody else has got that power. So that's why she says here, you are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence and the complete, the material existence, the cycle of birth and death, everything can be removed. Krishna says in another place also, is it not? Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha taktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti su Arjuna. He explains that also. One who understands my janma and one who understands my karma as divyam, as divine, he has got no repeated cycle of birth and death. Karmachame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha taktva deham punarjanma. Punarjanma naiti mam eti su Arjuna. After that, after leaving this body, there is no question of another birth for such a person. That's what he says. So he has got, he can cut with his axe the tree of material existence. And then he says, she says, I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists. And I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman and between spirit and matter. Now here, in this material world, there is a relationship between man and woman, because whether it's a man or a woman, everyone wants to enjoy in this material world. The person, in the way it has been explained, is Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is the enjoyer. Prakriti is to be enjoyed. But in this world, whether he be a man or a woman, everybody wants to enjoy. So everybody has got that Purusha attitude in them. And with that, they try to enjoy this material world. So that she's talking of, and she also wants to know about this spirit and matter. So Maitreya Muni is saying in text 12, after hearing of his mother's uncontaminated desire for transcendental realization, the Lord thanked her within himself for her questions, and thus his face smiling, he explained the path of the transcendentalists who are interested in self-realization. So now here starts the complete teachings of Kapila Deva. From here only it is starting actually. That's why it is called, this chapter is called The Glories of Devotional Service. Now here Kapila Muni is going to explain the highest yoga system called self-realization. This can be attained only by engaging in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So let's see here what Kapila Muni is saying. The personality of God had answered, the yoga system which relates to the Lord and the individual soul, which is meant for the ultimate benefit of the living entity and which detachment from all happiness and distress in the material world, is the highest yoga system. O most pious mother, I shall now explain unto you the ancient yoga system which I explained for the great sages. It is serviceable, practical in way. It is the consciousness of the living entity is attracted by the three modes of material nature is called conditional life. But when that same consciousness is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in the consciousness of liberation. From here, he says, now the three things he is talking of, Kapiladeva. One is talking of the Supreme Lord, the yoga system which relates to the Lord, and the individual soul, which is meant for the ultimate benefit of the living entity, and which causes detachment from all happiness and distress in the material world, is the highest yoga system. Here we have to understand what we talked some time back. If you go into the fourth chapter of the the sixth chapter, right, of Sankhya philosophy, Dhyana Yoga, what is being taught in Dhyana Yoga, sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is giving that yoga system, where the relationship between the yoga system, and in that yoga system, Krishna is very clearly explaining the appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress. I am not talking of Matra Sparshas Kaunteya. That is different. That is one. But I'm talking of here in the fourth chapter, in the sixth chapter, where Krishna is talking of this Dhyana Yoga, and he's referring to the blissful state, Ananda state, and also this appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress, the cycle of appearance and distress, cycle of appearance and disappearance. Now, what happens is, in this universe, in this material world, all of us have got this happiness and distress. When there is happiness, nobody has got a problem. Everybody welcomes that happiness, without realizing that happiness is always followed by distress. It is not that only happiness comes and distress doesn't come. No, the happiness comes. After some time, the distress comes. And the distress goes, again happiness comes. Again, distress comes. So there's always the cycle of happiness and distress, happiness and distress. How to avoid it? Because it is also explained that the quantum of distress what we get is much, much more than that happiness what we get in this material world. But the Maya has got such a powerful influence on us that small quantity of happiness what we get, we feel that this is all and everything. That is what we get. Because we feel that this small quantity of happiness is really good and this is what I'm enjoying in life, what happens is we are forced to forget that distress situations. But if you look into the proportion, distress is much, much more. Miseries are much, much more. The mind disturbances are so much more than the happiness. Especially in Kali Yuga. After all, what is Kali Yuga? Kali Yuga is a stage of complete upadritaha. That is how it has been explained in Bhagavatam. Upadrita means always disturbed. The mind is so much disturbed. So how do I overcome it? That is why here he is giving this. The first line itself is talking of the yoga, highest yoga system. And what is that highest yoga system? The highest yoga system is to link with the Supreme Lord for the living entity. The Jivatma has to learn to link with the Supreme Lord. How? Through devotional service. Through devotional service, establish a relationship between the Supreme Lord and the Jivatma. That is required. And that is a process which we have to learn and follow. And that's why here it says that which is meant for the ultimate benefit of the living entity and which causes detachment from all happiness and distress in the material world. There is the highest yoga system, he says. And then says, I shall now explain unto you the ancient yoga system which I explained formerly to the great sages. So he is not going to explain something new. So Bhagavan is saying that I've already explained this before. The same thing I will explain to you now again. And says the stage in which the consciousness of the living entity is attracted by the three modes of material nature is called conditional life. But when the same consciousness is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in the consciousness of liberation. So we have a choice. We can either be in the material consciousness or in Krishna consciousness. We can have that. So what we choose, that is up to us. And it says, when one is completely cleansed of the impurities of lust and greed. Now, this is the 16th verse of this 25th canto, and this is an important verse. So we'll also read the purport for this. When one is completely cleansed of the impurities of lust and greed, produced from the false identification of the body as I and bodily possessions as mine, one's mind becomes purified. In that pure state, it transcends the stage of so-called material happiness and distress. Kama and Lobha, that's what is going to talk. Purport. Kama and Lobha are the symptoms of material existence. Everyone always desires to possess something. It is said here that desire and greed are the products of false identification of oneself with the body. When one becomes free from this contamination, then his mind and consciousness also become freed and attain their original state. Mind, consciousness, and the living entity exist. Whenever we speak of the living entity, this includes the mind and consciousness. The difference between conditional life and liberated life occurs when we purify the mind and the consciousness. When they are purified, one becomes transcendental to material happiness and distress. Kama and Lobha. Now, is there anyone here who doesn't have a desire in this material world? Everyone has got some desire or the other. No one is free from desire. He says one becomes freed from this, then his mind and consciousness also become free. Desire and greed are the products of false identification of oneself with the body. But that is common. All of us are engaged in a manner that we have got our false identification of the body. We all consider that we are this body, and all our activities also we carry on in this material world only to satisfy this body. That is what we see, and that's what we are doing it. We are not completely come out of that. We still are doing many things for the satisfaction of the body only. That's what we are doing. So in the process, what has happened is that because of that, the greed, the desire, everything, we are unknowingly cultivating it. Everyone knows greed is a bad quality. We all know that, right? Lust is a bad quality. We know both these things. We do not want this. Although we are aware that both these are bad qualities, we have to get out. We are really not very conscious of how to get out of it. And the mind is also weak to some extent. The mind also does not want to get out of it because it's also able to enjoy certain things. But 100% everyone is aware that greed, lust, all these things are bad qualities, and somehow or the other we should be freed from that. Process. What is the process? That is something which we are not willing to take it up fully. With full commitment, we are not doing it. So here, Prabhupada is explaining, unless the mind becomes cleared, unless the mind is cleansed of this, where is that? When we speak of the living entity, this includes the mind and consciousness. Unless the mind is freed and attain their original state, when one becomes free from this contamination, then his mind and consciousness also become freed and attain their original state. So we have to get freed from that contamination. And in order to get freed from that contamination only, Krishna is talking of what is being talked here is of devotional service. This yoga system, highest yoga system, is being talked of. And here it says, in the beginning, Lord Kapila had said that perfect yoga enables one to transcend the platform of material distress and happiness. However, how this can be done is explained here. One has to purify his mind and consciousness. This can be done by the Bhakti Yoga system. As explained in the Narada Pancharatra, one's mind and senses should be purified. One's senses must be engaged in devotional service to the Lord. That is the process. The mind must have some engagement. One cannot make the mind vacant. Of course, there are some foolish attempts to try to make the mind vacant and void, but that is not possible. The only process that will purify the mind is to engage it in Krishna. The mind must be engaged. If we engage our mind in Krishna, naturally the consciousness becomes fully purified, and there is no chance of the entrance of material desire and greed. So again, it is coming to, we have to get into the yoga systems that has been taught in the Bhagavad Gita again, where Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga finally comes, where all the senses are engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. That is the only way to bring the mind under control. Rather, there is the only way to purify the mind. There's the only way to purify the consciousness also. Unless the senses are engaged, once the senses are engaged, automatically what happens is mind is the center of is the boss of all these senses. Because the mind is the headquarters of all the senses, what happens is once the senses are engaged, the mind also gets engaged in the activities of the senses. If the senses are engaged in the material activities, the mind is also engaged in the material activities, in the thoughts of material activities. But when the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord or in the service of the Vaishnavas, what happens is the mind also gets engaged in the service of the Lord or the Vaishnavas. So once the senses get used to serving the Lord, Supreme Lord, or the Vaishnavas, once the senses are used to doing only devotional activities, what happens is the senses do not want to do anything other than devotional service. It does not want to engage itself in any activity other than the seva for the Supreme Lord. Here comes the example of Ambarish Maharaja, which we can take. All of you know about Ambarish Maharaja, you would have heard. You know how he utilized all his senses only in the service of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, when we make it a habit, we have to make it a habit. Gradually, it starts as a habit. And once we make it a habit, then what happens is the senses do not want to engage itself in any activity other than the devotional service. So when that happens, the mind also doesn't like to do anything other than the devotional service. And this is the only way, through this Bhakti Yoga system only, the mind can be purified. Once the mind is purified, the desire and the greed, that also gradually goes down. This and lobha, both of it go down, and then what happens is we become totally, at least the entire thing gets suppressed, and we are on the right path, and then gradually the whole thing will disappear also in the advanced level of our devotional service. And he says, at that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. What is the size of our soul? Infinitesimal. Is it not? Infinitesimal. Whereas the Supreme Lord is infinite. The size of the soul, as explained in the the Jiva particle, the Vedic literature, and also in the purport, in one of the purports, Prabhupada is explaining 1/10,000th the size of the upper portion of a hair. So what it is like, we can't even see that, you know, it's totally impossible to see this soul. So the soul can see himself transcendental to material existence. That means we can experience it, that we don't get influenced by the material nature. Once we reach the stage where we are totally involved, where all our senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, and once we are totally into the Bhakti Yoga system at a higher platform, what happens is the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence. That means the soul can never be influenced by any of the three gunas, and it can see itself self-effulgent, and also it is never fragmented. Never fragmented means we should not think that we are, because we are in this material world, separated from the Supreme Lord, so we are totally separated and fragmented. That is not the case. when the sun is shining, the small molecules are there in the sunshine, in the sun rays, but those molecules are part and parcel of the sun rays. Similarly, although we are in this material universe, still we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. We are not segregated, we are not separated from that. In that position of self-realization, by practice of knowledge and renunciation in devotional service, one sees everything in the right perspective. He becomes indifferent to material existence, and the material influence acts less powerfully upon him. So this is the process of self-realization. What we saw, this highest yoga system of self-realization, a combination of knowledge and renunciation. You have to understand that. Self-realization is a combination of knowledge and self-realization, is it not? That's what has been explained to us. So when this combination of knowledge and self-realization comes, that means what? Combination of Jnana Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga. Both of these are coming, and with this, next what happens when there is a combination of Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga, next step is the Bhakti Yoga, where we get into. So the renunciation, so what happens in this position of self-realization by practice of knowledge and renunciation in devotional service. Now understand this. Just knowledge by itself is not going to be helpful. You should know that. Only knowledge without devotional service is nothing but mental speculation. Similarly, only devotional service, or rather, only practicing, following for the only, or rather, what you call that? Only practicing of the religion without the knowledge of the Supreme Lord, that is nothing but sentimentalism, or it can also lead to fanaticism. Simply following the religion without knowledge is fanaticism or sentimentalism. But only having knowledge and not doing anything on devotional service, that is nothing but speculation. It has to be a combination of both. When there is a combination of both, then what happens is our devotional service improves and we are able to progress on the devotional path. So here Prabhupada says, without knowledge one cannot have realization. The realization that one is the infinitesimal part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit makes him unattached to material conditional life. That is the beginning of devotional service. Unless one is liberated from material contamination, one cannot engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. When one is in full knowledge of one's constitutional position and is in the renounced order of life, detached from material attraction, then by pure devotional service, Bhakti Yuktena, he can engage himself as a loving servant of the Lord. That is what ultimately is required here, and that is what is being explained. Once he is able to understand and is able to locate himself in devotional service, then what happens is he becomes indifferent to material existence. He cannot be influenced by any of the material activities, any of the material nature, and material nature also knows there is no point in trying to do anything to him. You cannot influence him. He is beyond that influence. That's where he reaches the stage. Brahmabhuta prasannatma, na shauchati na kankshati. He reaches that stage and nothing can really influence him. Nothing can really disturb his devotional service. And text 19, and with this I will stop today with text 19 now. And this is that perfection in self-realization cannot be attained by any kind of yogi unless he engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personal of Godhead. For that is the only auspicious path. Perfection of devotional, perfection in self-realization cannot be attained by any kind of yogi unless he engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of God. For that is only auspicious path. So there is no other choice. It's not that we have been given different choices here. There's absolutely no choice. One has to, if one wants to attain that self-realization, one wants to get liberated from all the material activities, or rather not, I wouldn't say liberated, if one wants to get free from the influence of the material activities, if one wants to lead that Ananda stage, that blissful state, Ananda should not be confused with happiness. Happiness is distress, they are temporary in nature. Ananda is a permanent in nature, which is available only with the Supreme Lord. Only by associating with the Supreme Lord can that Ananda stage be reached. So if we want to reach that Ananda stage and be freed from this temporary happiness and distress, the only option we have, or the only choice we have, is to take up to devotional service of the Lord. And that's what Krishna is, Kapila Muni is explaining here. Perfection in self-realization cannot be attained by any kind of yogi unless he engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of God. Now, what happens to my various devotional service to other gods? If I do it, will that be helpful? Will that be also equivalent to my devotional service to the Supreme Lord? He says, no, it is not like that. There are different gods, but different demigods, and they are all only the appointed managers of the Supreme Lord. So just by trying to satisfy different demigods or different devatas, because I'm right from my childhood, I'm used to that, I will do that. That is not going to help me to progress in my, to get to that self-realization stage. So here, that's why it's explained, unless he engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or that is the only auspicious part. Engaging in devotional service means putting all my senses in the service of the Lord. Engaging all my senses in the service of the Lord, engaging my mind in the service of the Lord, my intelligence in the service of the Lord, my body in the service of the Lord. After all, everything has been given only by the Lord. So with this, I will stop for the day. I've already completed your 1 hour's time. Prabhu, Hare Krishna. So any questions you got? We can spend just about 1 or 2 questions. We can see. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dadar Pradam Prabhu.
Pradam Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for taking us through this wonderful session. Prabhu, one question I have. At the beginning, you mentioned that how Devahuti, she expressed that how she became sick. And you also mentioned that how all of us at some point of time, we feel that dejected or the frustration in our endeavor of sense gratification.
Yeah.
So we should understand that this is the driving force, that we should have this feeling of frustration, or we see that Rupa Goswami ji says in the Bhakti Samrit Sindhu that although I have been serving my senses throughout my life, but they never said that I'm satisfied. But when I got the lotus feet of Krishna, then I develop a power to say no to the sense gratification.
Here it is like this. What Devahuti is talking about, that I'm very sick of the disturbances caused by material senses. This is for the general mass of people, for us generally, because what happens is we all get ourselves engaged in the material activities. And many times we are misguided by the Maya. And we get this impression that we are happy in what we are doing. But also, we also come across many times situations where we are so much disturbed. Finally, we get that feeling of frustration that I don't want any of these things. That also we get into that. But not necessary that we have to come to that stage every time. Intelligent people need not wait for that. People who have been very fortunate enough to hear about Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, about Prabhupada's teachings, all these things, they can understand even without going through that stage. Not necessary that everyone has to pass through that stage, is it not? So, people who are already in the devotional service, we know this is the thing. But what happens is, because of our past habits, we tend to get ourselves involved in the material activities again and again. Not consciously, but unconsciously we get into those. Subconsciously we get into those activities. So that we can get rid of it. That we can realize, look, I'm getting into unnecessary difficulties. Better that I engage myself in the devotional service and become free from this. Let me not invite those problems. That is the thing. I'll give one a simple example. Who gets into the stock market? Only people who have got money or who are greedy to make money, right?
Yes.
So people who have got money, they want to make more money. So they get into the stock market. People who don't have money, they also want money, but they say, I don't have money to invest. But people who have got money, they get into the stock market to make more money. And when they lose that money, they feel bad. They feel distressed at that time. But when you know that you should not gamble, stock market is nothing but gambling. That everybody knows. Even the people, stock market is although people are trying to establish that is a very intelligent way of working, intelligent way of making money. I don't think till date, even Warren Buffett is not so intelligent to, otherwise he would be the richest man in the world. Everything would be under their control, right? If somebody knows how to operate in the stock market. Nobody knows really how to operate in the stock market. Everybody is trying their hand. So what happens is I know that I'm getting into something where I'm going to lose money, possibility. So I should not get into that. If I get that realization, I will not. I don't have to wait till the time I'm slapped. That is what it is.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna.
Any question,
Thank you
Prabhu?
very much. Shivaguna Prabhu? Yes, Prabhuji. Shivaguna Prabhu? Shivaguna Krishna Prabhu? Okay. Any questions, more questions today? Okay. Thanks. No questions. Okay, you can raise your hand if you have any question. We will unmute you. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Very explained class. Hope everybody is following. Thank you very much. And we will continue the second part tomorrow, and we will have third part also. So, day after tomorrow. So thank you very much, Prabhuji. We will thank Prabhuji for this wonderful session by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra 3 times. Please all together can chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Ram 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Thank you
Prabhuji.
very much.
So we'll do Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha. Kripa Sindhu.
Kripa Sindhu Devata
Namo Namo Namo.
Namaha
The Gaudiya Vaishnava ki jai. Srila
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Prabhupada.
Praise Vaikuntapati Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will meet tomorrow, same time. Hare Krishna. And all
Hare
pranams to all.
Krishna.
Sorry. The class was.
ನಾವು ಗಾಢ ತುನಿಯ ನಿಂಗೆ ಯಾರು